For years, lawmakers have gone back and forth on whether to legalize medical marijuana in North Carolina. Now, the first dispensary is open in the state, but it's in the Cherokee Nation. WECT's Ashley Balsavius looked into where the fight for medical marijuana stands now. Ashley, some people you spoke to today believe this new dispensary could change the game.
Right, Fran. One veteran I spoke with says it could be a blueprint to show lawmakers how medical marijuana could become a reality instead of a pipe dream. Could North Carolina become the next state to legalize medical marijuana? That question is up in the air as the 2024 legislative session began on Wednesday. Veteran Rob Rens has followed possible bills over the years as they've gotten bipartisan support in the state Senate, but ultimately went up in smoke in the House.
My cynicism tells me that it's a political football now.
Josh Stevens has epilepsy and believes access to cannabis would help his condition with medicine from a farm, not a pharmacy. But he questions the motives at the state house as well.
I think it's interesting that the state kind of prioritizes things like sports gambling over a medicinal purpose that can help cancer patients, AIDS patients, things like that. Yeah, I think it's like way overdue.
Ben Erickson owns Wilmington Dispensary and is a bit more optimistic about new legislation.
Whether it comes from the federal or the state level, I expect within 5 years we'll see legalization in this state.
One only has to look at the state's first legal medical marijuana dispensary for proof of change, although it resides on sovereign Native American lands with its own strict rules and regulations. However, Rens hopes it will light a fire for lawmakers to get a medical marijuana bill across the finish line for the rest of North Carolina.
My hope in it is that, our elected representatives and officials in Raleigh will look at that as, the inspiration that they need to be able to get something on Governor Cooper's desk this year.
Now, I reached out to several state lawmakers today to get an update on the status of any bills related to legalizing medical marijuana this legislative session, which started today, but I have not yet heard back. But the hope is a new bill will be introduced. We'll let you know if that happens.
All right. Thanks so much for that report, Ashley.